So think back to March of this year. What happened for you? What changed? What have you been working through? That was the biggest month of the year, and May is the second biggest month of the year, setting the stage for the next year and a half of major life changes, and then really for the summer, because the next big month of changes is coming in September. There's something in October, but it's a little more stabilizing and steady of the energies that have been cultivated so far in the beginning of 2025. I'm Jeremy Devins. This is the Quietmind Astrology Podcast. If you're new here, get your free birth chart at quietmindastrology.com. And you can check out a free live workshop I'm hosting on May 19th called Become Your Own Yoga Teacher. If you want to deepen your own practice in yoga, that's at quietmind.yoga/workshop. That'll be really fun and exciting and a great way to use these energies of change of Jupiter moving into Gemini this month, expansion, learning, growth, and Rahu moving into Aquarius, pursuing your passions, your unique passions in the world over the next 18 months. I'm going to talk about all the major transits this month, how to work with it, the new moon, the full moon, these two big turning points in life, not just this year, not just in May, but in life happening with Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu. So that's coming up in today's episode, and thank you for being here, and let's dive into it. So first of all, on May 4th, we have Pluto retrograde into Uttarashada in Capricorn. So Pluto's in a whole 20-year journey through Capricorn that started in 2020. Talked about this a lot on the episode, so I'll keep it short for today, but this is a turning point of Pluto looking at the structures in our lives. And for yourself on a personal level, looking into the deep personal growth work that is actually going to change things in your life is a great theme throughout May. So I like to do a lot of deep personal work myself. Like I did a family constellation recently that is really powerful, moved a lot from me. Of course, astrology gives us a lot of perspective of the potentials in our charts and in our lives. And knowing the dasha you're in, the major theme you're in, knowing the transits we're going through helps us see the major themes we're working with. But this whole thing of Pluto retrograde and Uttarashada, it is about looking at what goals you're setting in your life, what you are driven towards, and what are the deeper subconscious motivations of that, which is usually in the subconscious, in the shadow, in hidden things. And a good way to see that is through your projections of others. So anywhere in your life this month where you notice you are saying, they are this way, it can be good or bad. This person is brilliant and beautiful, or this person is miser, curmudgeon, negative, bad energy. Whatever the thing is, good or bad that you are labeling someone else, it's worth exploring. Is that true for you? There's a saying that sometimes if you're pointing a finger at someone else, there's three fingers pointing back at you, and one finger pointing up at the divine or God or the universe. So that means, what you see in others is actually, it's a reminder to look within and to look beyond the labels of others. So something to explore this month, any projections, judgments coming up. I've found this to be very, very helpful in my own path, my own work. I like Byron Katie's process. She calls it the work. If you've never done that, there's a worksheet you can find for free on Google. It's how to do the work, and it'll just walk you through the steps. But basically, it's whenever you are labeling, judging someone else, it's an opportunity to look within. So that's one of the big gifts of this Pluto retrograde and Uttarashada. And why that matters so much with this Uttarashada energy, I think, is because that's where a lot of your power is. And if you are labeling, judging, projecting onto someone else, it's something that is within you that can be integrated. And we see it exaggerated in others. As Carl Jung says, what is hidden, repressed, or denied in yourself will become exaggerated in others. So it becomes an opportunity to see that thing and then integrate it. And then now there's a part of you that you're integrating, especially if the positive stuff is a little more obvious. Like if you see someone else as so confident and courageous, but you don't describe yourself that way, by looking at how are you actually confident and courageous and turning that projection around to yourself, you may find your own inner confidence and courage and strength. And that is the real opportunity of this time of Pluto retrograde in Uttarashada. Whereas on a global level, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of changes to the government, and the U.S. is in its own Pluto return, which is a very powerful shift of energy of what the United States is and represents, and the whole structures of it. That's all changing. So that's out of our control. That's beyond ourselves. So this is a way to work with the energy for yourself. And I hope you find it helpful. I've found it very helpful. Anything I share here is stuff that I do practice and have done myself, and I think is really, really useful for working with these energies. The next notable transit's on Tuesday, May 6th. This is Mercury moving into Aries. Just over 2 weeks, Mercury moves fast. So Mercury changes signs quickly. So it's not a long-term energy, but it is basically through the middle of May, Mercury in Aries. The intelligence of yourself and the ability to start things. So it's a good time for initiating projects, taking action, being assertive and bold, and communicating in a way that gets to the point. There's a risk here of being a little bit abrupt and brash and harsh in your communication. Aries can be that way. Mercury is fast. Aries is fast. So you may be rushing over things that you may need to revisit when Mercury moves to Taurus on May 23rd. So we're going to end the month with a bit more of a steady, stable approach to communication and to the ways we're learning things. But it is a great time for starting new learning endeavors, exploring new projects in the middle of May, and then sustaining those through the end of May. So Mercury is about intelligence and learning and reading. If there's books you want to start, you may find yourself with a lot of energy and motivation for starting things like this, learning projects. But the real test comes in the end of May when Mercury moves to Taurus of like, okay, what are those things are you going to actually continue with and sustain? But don't shame yourself or beat yourself up if you start a book and you don't finish it. You start a project, you don't finish it. I think of it as Mercury in Aries as an opportunity to try things, to start things and see what you like. And sometimes you don't know if you're going to like a book until you get like 20 pages into it, or you don't know if you're going to like a project until you started on it for a few days or weeks, and then you realize maybe that's not actually what you wanted to do, but you needed to explore that. And I trust that that's the kind of Mercury in Aries energy at its best of, let's see what's out there. Let's try this. Let's try that. It's kind of like going to the buffet of life and, let's try that. Okay, I don't like it. I'm not going to invest a lot into that. I'm not going to use a lot of that or eat a lot of that. But then you find something you really do like in that process, and you discover new things about yourself and new interests and new hobbies, new paths to explore. And then when Mercury goes to Taurus at the end of May, you choose to go deeper with that and sustain that thing. So it gives you more of the sustaining power of the earth sign of Taurus. And that's a great way to work with this energy this month. And that's something I'll be doing, going through my list. I've got so many books to read, so many recommendations I get, and no time for all of them. But it's a time I look at Mercury and Aries. Okay, let's thumb through those. Let's skim them and see which ones I want to go into. Let's look at the projects I got going on. If there's one I want to go deeper with, or maybe something I want to try and test out, and then go deeper with it later. The next big transit is on May 12th, Monday, full moon in Vishaka in Libra. This is also a strong energy for goal setting, like I mentioned with the Pluto in Uttarashada. But this is a month where you might want to go deeper into some unfinished projects, dreams, and goals. If you listen to the last episode, I talked about a process for envisioning your ideal life. I recommend that if you haven't listened to that one, or if you haven't done that process. That's a great way to sort of get the feel, the energy, the reality that you want to live into and create. Envision that. And now with this Vishaka full moon in Libra on May 12th, Monday, May 12th, is a time to look at how you've achieved the things that you've set your mind to and what things you want to achieve next. Vishaka is quite a driven, ambitious energy, but it's more relational in Libra. So it's not like the Aries starting things. It's more like the Libra sustaining and compromising and balancing things. And what things do you want to build for the long term? There's a sense of justice, righteousness, duty in Vishaka. There's a sense of purpose, mission, direction, but it's very relational and able to compromise, able to see what's needed in a group. There could be some manipulative energies you might experience in yourself or others here, of just seeking the goal, the outcome for the sake of the outcome rather than for connection or seeing like what's fair in the relationship. That could happen with this energy around middle of May. So being aware of that in yourself to actually work towards harmony and balance. So it can be a very beautifully harmonizing, goal-oriented kind of energy where it's you're working together. And that phrase like teamwork makes the dream work is very applicable to this around middle of May. So if there is something you're wanting to work together, collaborate on in relationship or in partnership in some way, in community in some way, it's very favorable for all of that. And always the full moon's a day for celebration, reflection, and it can also bring stuff to the surface. So a lot of unconscious energies to work with this month and bring stuff to the surface of what needs attention. Around the full moon, there's a heightened sense of energy. There's often more emergency room visits on this day. So I always think of it as a day to chill out a bit and not push yourself and give some space for what wants to arise because things can come to the surface from the darkness that are illuminated now, just like the moon is illuminated fully. When it can also be dark, now it's illuminated on the 12th, bringing stuff to light that may have been in the darkness, and now you can see more clearly and have more direction in your goals, a direction in your relationships with the Vishaka energy. Next notable transit this month is on Wednesday, May 14th. We have two of them actually. The sun is in Taurus. This happens every year, not the biggest deal. But if you have your birthday in this time, then your sun in Taurus after the 14th until middle of June. So happy birthday to everyone with sun in Taurus is coming up. But it's a stabilizing, strong, focused energy. It's a great leadership energy. There is a bit of stubbornness that can come here. So again, all this energy this month of moving a bit towards goals, or maybe some stubbornness to be aware of here. But overall, this second half of May is moving towards more stability. I talked about last month a lot of the Aries energy of action, starting, beginning things. But now there's a bit more stabilizing energy in the second half of May, especially after Mercury gets into Taurus on May 23rd. And the sun's there as well. But with all that, we also have Jupiter in Gemini on May 14th. This is one of the biggest transits of the whole year. I've talked about it a lot throughout this past few months because it's bringing expansion and growth into your creative expression. Jupiter's expansion, Gemini creativity. It's bringing potential to meet a lot of new friends, new connections, new ways of expressing yourself using the tools of modern technology like AI. And maybe if you want to grow an online business, this is a very favorable summer to do that, all the way from May through October while Jupiter's in Gemini. It's an interesting transit because Jupiter is going to only be in Gemini for a few months. Usually it's a full year, but with the retrograde, it's going to go into Cancer in October. So this means that this is a sort of broken up time or unique time where you're going to start something from May through October. There's going to be a lot of expansion and growth in your life. And then there's sort of emotional depth that's going to come in October with that project, with that part of your life. You want to look where Gemini and Cancer are in your own chart to really assess this. And you can get your free birth chart at quietmindastrology.com. Look where the number 3 and 4 are. That's Gemini and Cancer. That's where Jupiter will be in those houses. And you can go back to the episodes on houses to interpret that. But essentially, there's a lot of new learning, growth, new creativity, new expression coming through in the summer. And then there's a need for an emotional anchoring of that and a lot of personal growth emotionally coming in the October through November time briefly, and then really fully in 2026. So it's kind of an interesting transit that's going on here. I should have said October through beginning of December is that Jupiter in Cancer time. A lot of emotional growth, emotional depth, and emotional healing here. Very beautiful energy, Jupiter in Cancer. Very good for family and personal learning and growth and working with teachers in your life at the end of the year. But this time, May through October, there's been a lot of talk about AI just growing immensely. And things like this are going to keep happening. But integrating that into your life, using those tools, and there's a lot of talk about it replacing lots of jobs. I mean, this happens through every major turning point in history with the agricultural revolution and computers and the internet, and then now AI. So there's going to replace jobs, but also create a lot of new jobs. So it's not the end of the world, but that's important to consider if you have a job that's very likely to be affected by this, to look at how you can utilize these tools or express yourself in creative ways, or if you want to transition into some other field of work that's more aligned for you. There's a huge opportunity in that through this summer. And using these things in a more creative, productive, helpful way, they're really amazing and they're really useful. They're not replacements for humans, but they're supplements, just like a computer is not a replacement for a friend in general or an accountant or anything like that. But software helps and services help on the computers. And this is just another tool. And AI is just a very, very useful tool. It can do a lot of things. But it's going to grow and expand this year. So looking at ways you can integrate that into your life if you haven't already. The most popular, commonly used one is ChatGPT, and you can use it just like Google. Like if you're going to look up like what's the best restaurant in town, you can just ask the AI. Or if you're looking up how to fix something in your house, you can just ask ChatGPT. It's very useful for a lot of things. It's not a replacement for everything, but it's a great tool and something to integrate more into our lives throughout this summertime, Jupiter and Gemini. And there can be some kind of conflicting energies between your head and your heart. Because Jupiter is like the wisdom of spiritual wisdom and insight and intuition, which we could consider our heart wisdom. And Gemini is more the intellectual intelligence, the understanding, the grasping, the concepts. And these energies are sometimes at odds, where maybe there's a logical decision you need to make throughout the summer of, maybe you should take this opportunity, this job opportunity, but your heart's not in it. And, logically it makes sense to choose option A, but your heart and your intuition is saying option B. And it doesn't really make sense how logically to do option B. So you want to maybe go towards the logical thing of option A. And these kind of things happen a lot for all of us. I talk with a lot of people working with these kind of things. And, you might think I'm just going to say, of course, follow your intuition, your heart, and choose the thing that, you feel most alive. That's not always the right advice. That's not always the best thing. And with Jupiter and Gemini and all the Pisces energy going on this year, I've talked about, there can be some confusion and uncertainty of like, how do you know? Are you really making the right decision or following your heart? Or is this really just foolish? Or is it really smart? There's some needing to explore this for yourself. There's not an easy answer with this because Jupiter and Gemini together is a little bit of a confusing energy, just like all the Pisces stuff can be a little confusing, all the planets in Pisces this year, and Saturn in Pisces as well. But there is a big overarching theme this year of creating a sort of structure for being beyond structure. Saturn structure, Pisces beyond structure. It's a bit paradoxical. There's a lot of paradoxical energy this year. And I like the Carl Jung quote also that it's one of the most important skills of this century is to be able to find peace within paradoxes, to be able to reconcile paradoxes. So there may be some parts of your life where it's not about choosing A or B, but somehow integrating A and B and choosing both in some degree, or not just having to do it a certain way, but not the other way, but somehow integrating these ways of being and integrating parts of yourself. And it's a very interesting energy of maybe challenging your assumptions, challenging your old ways of doing things, and also not just going to the extreme of, okay, well, I was going left, now I'm just going to go hard right, or I was going right, now I'm going to go hard left. That is not really what this energy is about. It's like, how do you go right and left at the same time? How do you go left and right together? It's integration. So there's no real easy answers for this. And it may be a little confusing and challenging at times through the summer of how to express this. And even what I'm saying might be a little confusing right now, but maybe it'll make more sense if you come back to this episode in a few months. But for yourself, just looking at what you want in your life, that's always a good place to start. We talked about last week on the podcast. What do you want? What do you envision in your life? And how does that make sense? How do you make that a reality? And there's probably going to be pieces that don't quite make sense yet, or how do you do that? But how do you bring in the practical and the impractical, the freedom and the structure, and how do you balance these things out? There's opportunity to explore that a lot this year. Gemini is really an invitation to be playful. So a really positive expression of this is the kind of guru who's just really playful and just funny and silly, and there's this whole parable. I'll share a short version of this, like Zen koan. Basically, this Zen master is like saying, like, to his student to meditate and answer the question. I think it was like, what is the sound of one hand clapping, or one of these things? We've heard so many times. And the student comes back and he gives like a really clever answer, and the Zen master says, "No, keep meditating." And then the student comes back and he gives a very vulnerable answer and very emotional answer, and the master says, "No, it's still not quite it." So he's not really looking for the logic. He's not really looking for the emotion. He's looking for something deeper. Like, you've touched something deeper in yourself, like a truth, a connection to the divine. In the Zen tradition, is connection to the Zen energy. And eventually, this goes on for months, and the student comes back and is sort of confounded and just puts up his middle finger at the teacher and says, "F you, I'm out of here." and the master nods and laughs and says, "Okay, now you're onto something," because he let go of the way of like trying to do it right, or trying to impress the teacher, or trying to prove something. And in that moment, the student had this sort of real surrender of just like, I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything else. You just screw it, And it's not necessarily meant to be like a bad way, or like give up kind of way, but in a way of like, you've kind of broken down the ways of trying to control, trying to reason, trying to understand everything through the mind. And now you're just really just being present of like, I don't know what else to say. And there's a surrender in that, and not in the sense of like anger or frustration, but in the sense of surrender. So I think that's a big lesson of all the Pisces energy this year, and a big lesson in life I've experienced so many times. Maybe you have as well. It's like you're struggling with something, you struggle months and months, and then at a certain point you just sort of like surrender to it. It's like, okay, fine. If I'm going to struggle, I'm just going to struggle, and I just accept that. And then it changes, and then the relationship changes, the work changes, whatever the thing is. Many years ago, I had a job where I knew I wanted to quit the job, but I felt like I had to quit the job from a place of like, I could take it or leave it. Not that I have to quit, but that if I stay, it's okay. And if I quit, it's okay. But it's not that I have to quit, or that I'm pushing against this. I'm just like letting it go. And if I have to say it's okay, I accept it, I enjoy it. And if I get to go and I let it go, I accept that and enjoy that as well. And then when I did leave, it felt very good and peaceful. And, I felt like I didn't carry that energy into the next work situation. I felt like I just really moved on. And I think there's something really powerful in that non-grasping of parigraha we talk about in the yoga tradition. So these are all some of my thoughts on how this Jupiter and Gemini energy is teaching us to be more playful in life, more spontaneous, more present, more curious, less controlling, more surrendered. It's a big theme of the year. And then, as I mentioned, the next big transit's on May 23rd. Mercury moves in Taurus. And that week, May 19th, is the Become Your Own Yoga Teacher Workshop. If you want to go into learning the philosophy, anatomy, everything that goes into yoga practice, the 10 core competencies of yoga, I'll be sharing that at the free workshop. Lots of useful stuff there. And it's a workshop, so it'll be interactive as well, and lots of stuff for you to bring into your own embodiment practice. Traditionally, you learn yoga, Ayurveda, and astrology, Jyotish, all together as a whole system of yoga for the mind and body, Ayurveda for the body and health and longevity, and astrology for the spirit and the spiritual perspective of life, and integrating all three of those. So if you want to learn the yoga part, the meditation, the breath work, the mindfulness, and everything I've learned in my over 7,000 teaching hours of yoga. As many of you know, I host the Yoga Teacher Training Podcast. That it will be what we're touching on here at the free live workshop. Become your own yoga teacher on May 19th. You can check it out at quietmind.yoga/workshop. Now, there's just two more, technically three transits to talk about here for the month of May. We have the new moon in Rohini on the 26th. So ending the month with this beginning energy going into June. June is going to be quite a strong month as well. It's a little more steady, less major changes, but there's some strong energy coming in June. And it starts with this new moon in Rohini on the 29th in Taurus. So the new moon is exalted. It's beautiful energy for anything to do with bringing emotional balance, more security into your life, nurturing things, comforting things, receiving massage, giving massage, taking care of yourself, connecting in a grounded way. Very good for relationships and getting more stability there. There's still this Taurus energy, so there's a risk of some stubbornness, resistance here, and attachment to comforts coming up throughout the end of May, being aware of that. But the new moon is always a beginning. It's always an energy of new beginnings, new opportunities, planting seeds of intention around things of family, stability, home, nurturance in Taurus. And then the last big one is Rahu in Aquarius and Ketu in Leo. So this is a big 18-month cycle. I'll do a whole episode just on this because it's such a profound impact. But really, there's a big opportunity for stepping into new roles of leadership in an innovative way in the collective service of the collective, breaking free from ego and contributing to bigger causes. So starting May 29th, there's an 18-month cycle to let go of your attachments, let go of your ego, and focus on what you want to create, innovate, bring into the world, how you want to be part of communities and causes you care about. And there's a risk here of losing yourself a bit, of losing your sense of your needs and your wants in your life and being too much in focus and service to others. But overall, it is quite a positive energy and opportunity for a lot of personal growth, a lot of spiritual growth. And this is something we'll talk about more in the future episode because it's so big. But I'll just say that for now is knowing May 29th is one of the biggest turning points, setting the stage for the next 18 months. And it is moving more towards global, societal, communal issues and less towards the self. A lot of the energy of 2025 is about dissolving the ego, dissolving the ways of controlling, of protecting the self, and allowing yourself to be more authentic, to be more of your true self, of the capital S self, connected to spirituality, to source, to community, to others, and to your purpose. So a lot of beautiful, beautiful energy with this. And it can be a little confusing again, a lot of confusing energy this year for people to be aware of, where you might feel like you're losing yourself. Who am I? What am I doing here? And, those are important questions to ask really every day. It's like, we don't really know and we think we know, but to really reassess of like, okay, how can I be of service? Who do I need to be of service, to be in this role, in this time of my life? And we think we get attached to identities and ways of being, but those can become anchors and really slow us down and limit us from growth and limit us from connecting to others. So this whole shift on May 29th is about giving you an opportunity to let go of those ways of being that no longer serve, letting go of those attachments, those ego constructs, so you can be more free, more authentic, more expressed. Aquarius is about being eccentric, being yourself, being innovative. And there's a big opportunity here from May 29th to just reinvent yourself, like really look at your life in a new perspective, a new light, and let go of things that are not working anymore. So we'll talk about that more in a future episode. And hopefully this gives you some perspective of the shifts of energy going on this month. Lots of cool stuff, lots of big changes, setting the stage for the next 4 months until we get September is the eclipse season. There's going to be lots of stuff in between there. We'll talk about it in future episodes, but it's a little more stabilizing now, a little less huge changes after May, but June, July, August, a little more stabilizing. And then September, the eclipses. October's got a big transit. And if you want to know how to work with your mind and body and breath in a deeper way, check out the free live workshop, Become Your Own Yoga Teacher. Had amazing feedback on this last year. It's the second year I'm offering this. It's at quietmind.yoga/workshop. And you can join me live there to learn about the yoga side of things and embodying this stuff. Because I think that's where this stuff really becomes practical and daily, is how you integrate this into your daily practices, to how you're breathing, how you're regulating your nervous system, how you're embodying the way you want to be, working out the tensions and kinks in the body, and knowing how to really work with tight muscles. Because I had a lot of misconceptions early on. I think a lot of people do have misconceptions of how the body really works, what really causes tight muscles and tension in the body, and how to address that. And then there's so much. It's such a rich, deep world of yoga. I love sharing it. There's 10 core competencies I share about, and I'll cover those at the free workshop and help you assess where you're at and what your next steps are. So quietmind.yoga/workshop to join me live on May 19th. And thanks for listening. Hope you have a great month and look forward to sharing more with you next time on the Quiet Mind Astrology Podcast.